Hi, it's me again, and I'm back this time with a few tips for you about writing well at the college level. There are a few things that you can do with your writing that are easy things that you can do, easy steps that you can take to just improve the level of writing that you're handing in to your professors. These ideas are really easy to incorporate into your writing. They won't require that you take more courses in English composition necessarily. There's just a few little easy things to keep in mind that will really improve your writing, even if you don't say have a wonderful genius level grasp of the material that you're supposed to be writing about. If you can keep a few writing tips in mind and format your paper well, it can make all of the difference to the teacher. Like, as a teacher myself, I did not grade on how well or how deeply I thought a freshman level student would understand, like the layout of a Renaissance church, something like that. But I did look at how much thought they would put into structuring their paper and supporting their ideas and developing their writing, these sorts of things. Because at the freshman level or sophomore level, I really don't care like how much you know about a topic. It's more about how ready are you to go on to like a junior level writing or a senior level writing, or are you ready to graduate from college, from undergrad college? And these tips are really easy for you to start to develop in your own papers, to keep them in mind and incorporate into your own writing. And they make your writing go from, say, a B paper to an A paper if your teacher is not too hung up on how much, how deeply you understand the content, but if they're more looking at how well you write, these types of things will really help you. Now, I got this how-to guide from the University of Toronto, which is a wonderful school up in Canada, wonderful university. And I'm just for your educational purposes going to review a few things here about quotations. And I just did a video about block quotes, and there was a couple of things about block quotes that I didn't tell you in that video that I'm going to share with you now. Okay, first of all, you don't want to have too many quotes in your paper. All right, this is just like more aimed for like freshman and sophomore level papers where you're only really going to be expected to write like a 3-page paper. Maybe you do 4 of those in a semester. All right, you don't want to have that whole paper filled up with a bunch of quotes, because when your professor sees that, they know that the ideas in the paper aren't really resulting from a synthesis of things that you've read and understood and can now relate to me. They are more or less just relying on the authors to do the work of writing your paper. And so right here, I have that, spelled out for you in this guide. It says the focus of your essay should be on your understanding of the topic. If you include too much quotation in your essay, you will crowd out your own ideas. Okay, and that's exactly, this is a nice way of them telling you what I just told you in not such a nice way. All right, we know if you have synthesized ideas and can write about them in your own way, if you're not relying too heavily on quotations. All right, now I would recommend too that you go and get this writing advice guide from the University of Toronto and look it over yourself, because I'm going to go through all of the details of this. It's just a little bit of support for some of the things that I have tried to mention before in some of my other prior tutorials, especially about using quotes. Okay, now let's just scroll down here. There's another thing. The full sentence about quotes. Now, I had mentioned this in the prior video about block quotes. As much as you can avoid it, unless you're writing for a very technical, high level journal article or something like that, you never want to end a paragraph with a block quote. You can more get away with ending a paragraph with an inline citation, but you don't want to end a paragraph with a block quote. because there's a lot of analysis that needs to come from there's a lot of analysis that needs to be made in your paper about that quote. Like, what is its relevance to the rest of your paragraph? And so if you just have the quote and nothing after it, and you start a new paragraph about something else, then your professor is going to know that you don't really understand how to relate that material to the rest of your ideas in the paragraph, and or to come to some sort of conclusion about how you're going to further develop the ideas that author has already written about and that you're now relying on or citing. Do you understand? So it says here, the full sentence introduction to a block quote helps demonstrate your grasp of the source material, and it adds analytical depth to your essay. But the introduction alone is not enough. Long quotations almost invariably need to be followed by extended analysis. Never allow the quotation to do your work for you. Usually you will want to keep the quotation and your analysis together in the same paragraph. Hence, it is a good idea to avoid ending a paragraph with a quotation. Okay, I don't make this stuff up, okay? It's the truth. But if your analysis is lengthy, you may want to break it into several paragraphs, beginning afresh after the quotation. Okay, and that would be rare. I don't see that too often in freshman or sophomore level writing. It's really at a much higher level of writing where you're not concluding an idea with each paragraph at the freshman and sophomore level. That would be more typical, and that would be probably, for the most part, more acceptable to a professor if you're doing that. You can spread these ideas over a few paragraphs in your paper, but even if you do that, I still think that you should use a sentence or two. Certainly you're going to need a connecting sentence between paragraphs. And so that connecting sentence is the sentence at the end of a paragraph that it's like a thought about how the ideas in the paragraph that you just wrote are going to introduce the reader to the content of the next paragraph. Those connection sentences are difficult. They take a long time to learn how to do well, and a lot of practice, but you do need them. So they are sentences that end a paragraph, conclude an idea in a paragraph, and introduce you to the content that's going to be in the next paragraph. They're necessary, and I would say learn to write those. If you don't write them well, I know right away that you're not a strong writer. Okay? Now another thing is too, that I saw in this that I thought was really helpful. Let me just screw up here. Okay. Are these different ways to introduce a block quote in your paper? So instead of just writing every single time, in this sense, the author stated this idea, or they'll say something, the authors refer to the following in their analysis of this subject, colon, and then you start the block quote. Repeating that same type of phraseology over and over and over again, according to the authors, they thought this, or according to the authors, their analysis involved this. Okay, saying the same type of thing over and over will get you in trouble too and makes you seem like an underdeveloped writer. So here's a list of verbs and phrases that you could use to introduce your quotes, and your paper will just read better if you use a little bit of diversity in the way you're setting up paragraphs and introducing quotes. So you could say the authors argue, so-and-so writes, but this author points out, and so-and-so concludes. This other author comments. You see, there's just more diversity here, and that will lead your reader to believe that you're just a more experienced reader and a more experienced writer, and that you have some sort of internal understanding of how somebody wants to read a paper or wants to receive information. They don't want to hear the same phrases repeated over and over again in your paper. They want to have a little bit of diversity so that your paper is interesting, so that your writing is interesting. Now, on that note, I also have one more point for you. I pulled up this paper off of Google Scholar, And I spend a lot of time looking for articles in Google Scholar, and archaeology papers seem to be really good at making this point about writing and what constitutes. This is just an easy tell, okay, about whether or not you're a good writer or an experienced writer if you have read a lot, okay? Because this is something that you won't be taught in an English class. It just will come to you after you've read a lot of professional papers. Now, what the author is doing here is they're talking about this scholar here who's done some analysis of Pecos rock art in Texas in the Great Basin, okay? And his name is Whitley. And what they do is they're going to mention Whitley a few times in this paragraph here. And each time they mention him or reference him, they are varying the pronoun or the proper noun that they use. Okay, so in this sentence they say, Whitley also considers, right? And then the next time they want to reference him, they say he argues. Do you see how that's different? And then they go back to Whitley, all right? That is just, it may not seem like an important thing to you, and it's very subliminal, but when professors read papers, they know, like from their students, they know whether or not that student has read a lot of papers before, because the more you read, the more you notice these types of writing patterns, and the more you'll start to mimic them in your own writing. They will become part of your own academic voice when you're writing, okay? I know this all probably sounds a little preachy, and I'm just trying to help you, but these are things that I noticed about what sets apart like undergraduate writing and graduate level writing are just these few turns of the pen that you might not even be taught in an English class. Okay. Another thing here is, again, let's just look at this paper. All right. And notice, this is a really good tell. There is almost no paragraph in this paper that isn't at least like 4 or 5 sentences long. Many of them have like, 7 or more sentences. You're not going to all of a sudden run into a paragraph in this paper that is 2 sentences long. Okay? Every one of the ideas expressed in this paper are expressed as complete ideas with a beginning and a middle and an end, some conclusion drawn, some sort of reference as to where the idea comes from, and some like points of support for that idea. Right. And usually, there's a reference to some other kind of scholar who's mentioned something about it before or who has contributed to that idea. And you see here that rule about quotes. This is okay. If you end a paragraph with an inline citation, that's okay. If it's me, I wouldn't make a huge habit of that. Maybe in some sorts of writing, it's considered more okay. Like in business writing, I know that certain rules of grammar are not as considered as important as they might be, like, say, in a philosophy writing or an English writing course. So you kind of have to just read a lot on your own to understand what is acceptable in the field of writing that you're writing in. There are different voices for different styles or genres of writing. Okay, so anyway, like I said, this is an archaeology paper, and I find that individuals who publish in archaeology journals are very good writers. They're sciencey, but they're not overly technical to the point that you can't understand them. So if you really want to study good writing, just pick up an archaeology magazine and read a few. Just read something you're interested in, and notice some things like this. Like how names and references to people, pronouns, and this sort of thing are laid out in a paragraph. Like how things are not said over and over again. How there's no like colloquial types of sayings like, well, yeah, but, like use more formal language and don't use like the type of talk that you would use to be casual with your friends. And notice how paragraphs are actually set up and structured, how they are supported, what is supporting them, and how scholars are relying on other authority to support their ideas, and how all of this is being worked together into one single paragraph. And like I was saying, if you are, not a strong writer and you kind of know that, all right, in a freshman level or sophomore level writing class, if it were me and I was the teacher, and I think most of the teachers that I've worked with, most of the professors of the younger college age students, we don't really care if you show that you know the content, extraordinarily deep understanding of it. We're not really so much concerned about that. We're more concerned with, have you learned the tools of writing, and are you going to be able to go into a junior level writing class and pass it without embarrassing yourself? Okay. If you go into a junior level writing class and you fail it, they may say to you that you have to take another class in writing or English, and that will inevitably delay how long it takes for you to graduate. So a few things like this that you could just be aware of when you are reading, how these writers are writing, will help strengthen your writing. And do read your textbook. Read it, read it, read it. And read whatever else you have time to read. I don't even care if it is a comic book. Read it. If you could read some constitutional law, if you could pick up the Wall Street Journal and read an article once in a while, if you could read something off of Google Scholar about archaeology, you will benefit so much, because your understanding of writing will improve. And you don't need an English class for that. You just need exposure to it. Okay? So I promise you, read more and you will write better.